This book is definitely one of the more palatable books I've read about aliens. Not to say that most people would find it palatable, and honestly not to say it's even about aliens, because I don't think that that's what it's truly about. The book I'm going to be talking about today is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, which was translated from Japanese to English, and I found this book captivating. Hello, welcome, my name is Leah, and this is my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that make me uncomfortable, whether they're disgusting, disturbing, awkward, what have you. And today's book, in terms of trigger warnings, going through the list, we have essay, incest, violence, murder, cannibalism. We're really checking it all off. If you feel comfortable proceeding, let's do it. This book is told from the main character's perspective. The main character is Natsuki. She is an 11-year-old girl living in Japan with her parents and older sister. And Natsuki's prized possession is her stuffed animal named Piyu. She tells us that Piyu is from another planet, and I'm going to say the name of this planet multiple times throughout this video, and each time I say it, it's going to feel like a struggle. Planet Poppin-Bopopia. And Piyu was sent to Earth by the Magic Police because the Magic Police heard that Earth was in crisis, so they sent Piyu to save the day. But Piyu needs Natsuki's help to save the Earth. Allegedly, Piyu gives Natsuki these magical objects that help her become magical as well and will enable her and Piyu together to save the planet. The book begins with Natsuki's family traveling to Natsuki's grandparents' house, and they live in a very remote area up in the mountains, and they're going to have a family reunion that they have every year in the summer. Now, there is only one person who knows that Natsuki is magical, and that is her boyfriend. Her boyfriend is her cousin, Yu, and nobody knows that her cousin is her boyfriend. She understandably knows to keep this a little hush-hush. Again, she's 11. Apparently, her and her cousin Yu promised themselves to each other when they were 9. And initially we get the vibe that this is sort of an innocent, childlike relationship where they maybe don't even really fully understand what it means to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're just close. But anyway, Yu will be at this family reunion, and so when Natsuki first told Yu that she was magical, he had something to tell her as well, which is that he is an alien. And she's like, well, you know, that's crazy. My stuffed animal is an alien from planet Poppin-Bopopia. What if you're from planet Poppin-Bopopia as well? And Yu tells her, you know, my mom told me that I was abandoned by a spaceship as a baby, and I'm so lucky that she looks after me because I'm not even her son, I'm just an alien. And right off the bat, we see that the characters in this book, particularly Natsuki and Yu, are not treated well by their family. This book does definitely get bleak, and I think that makes it that much more natural for these characters to gravitate towards the realm of magic and aliens. By the end of the family reunion, Natsuki actually asks Yu to marry her, and they exchange these little fake rings, and they, you know, agree that they will be together forever. I want to give you a little bit of background information about how Natsuki sees the world. It's very interesting, especially for an 11-year-old child. She thinks of her town and basically society at large as a factory, or the factory, if you will. And everyone is raised to be factory components. And basically what the factory wants from all its components is it wants them to make money, exchange money for food, form breeding pairs, and produce babies. So work and produce. That is unfortunately a pretty simplified but accurate version of what our society encourages of us. And it's so interesting that she views the world in this way. And we learn that she doesn't necessarily seem to have the same desires that everyone else has. She doesn't know if she's going to really want to, get a job, get married, and have babies to benefit her society. She wants to do these things just to be helpful. And part of the reason she wants to be helpful is because her family has lowered her self-esteem so much. They have told her that she's worthless, ugly, clumsy. Her mom in particular really goes after her, which is really sad because the mom totally dotes on her older sister. And it's very unclear why she has a disliking for Natsuki, because the more she tells her that she's worthless, the more Natsuki is almost like apologetic for existing and like, so sorry to inconvenience you. You are so wonderful to take me in and take care of me. She's constantly offering to help around the house, but her mom says she's too stupid and messy to even do that. So all she wants in life is to be a helpful, useful factory component. And she even views her womb as a tool of the factory. The whole thing is intense for an 11-year-old. Unfortunately, it's not just Natsuki's home life that's rough, but her school life as well. She has a teacher named Mr. Igasaki, and Mr. Igasaki is actually pretty young, I think early 20s, and all of the girls actually pine over him. They think he's really handsome. And he seems to pay special attention to Natsuki. One day after class, this is super disgusting, but he tells her she needs to stay after class, and he has her sit down and he presents her with this object that's wrapped up. He goes to unwrap it, and you see that it is a used menstrual pad. And Natsuki is actually on her period, and this was something that she had thrown away in one of the waste receptacles in the bathroom. And he starts scolding her, saying that she did not wrap it up in enough toilet paper, which she wrapped it up, but I guess, he's saying that wasn't enough, and here, you need to let me show you how to do it properly, and shows her the correct amount of toilet paper that she needs to wrap it in, and says, okay, yeah, now show me you know how to do it. And he makes her take her pants off and do it in front of him. The whole thing is disgusting and humiliating for her. After the fact, she actually tries to tell her mom about this and tries to say that, yeah, something seems kind of weird about him. And she starts to tell her what happened, and her mom has an insane reaction, saying that she is so dirty and disgusting and filthy for thinking like that and making up these lies about her teacher. She starts beating her with a slipper. The whole thing is honestly heartbreaking. One day, Mr. Igasaki tricks Natsuki into going over to his house. He tells her that her friend is over. She's worried about her friend and worried that he is probably doing something gross to her, and so she wants to protect her. So she agrees to go to Mr. Igasaki's house, and when she gets there, of course, her friend is not there. He was lying to her. And at this point, he does essay her, and it's really horrifying. And during this experience, she dissociates from her body. She sort of feels like she's up in the air, looking down, watching everything that's happening. And in her mind, this must be a new magical power that she developed, because as I said, she thinks she's magical, and she's like, oh my gosh, I learned a new one. After this, Natsuki actually learns that her grandfather has died, and her grandfather is one of the grandparents whose house she had visited, that they go to every year for the family reunion. And so because there's going to be a funeral, she's actually going to go to their house. It's in a place called Akashina, and they're going to go to Akashina, to this remote mountain house, and she's going to get to see Yu again, her cousin slash boyfriend, and she's going to be getting to see him a lot sooner than she expected, because normally she only gets to see him once a year. Once Natsuki and Yu are together, Natsuki tells him that she is genuinely concerned about being killed. She's really afraid of Mr. Igasaki and what he might do to her, and so she tells Yu, we need to get married tonight, because remember, they were engaged, but they haven't gotten married yet, so they're saying, we need to do a little ceremony here tonight. So they sneak out in the middle of the night, they have the ceremony, and then Natsuki tells Yu that she would like to be a lot closer to him. And she suggests that they have sex. So at this point we realize like, oh, okay, it's not just that this was like kind of a cute innocent thing where they didn't really understand what they were saying and doing. Not that I think that they understand the extent of what they're doing. This is a lot heavier than what I thought it was going to be. And he doesn't necessarily seem like, oh, that's something he was like wanting or hoping to do, but he is willing to do it, not because he feels pressured into it, but because he really, really cares about her, and he sees that this is something that she wants, and he really wants to make her happy. And so he agrees, and these little 11-year-old cousins have sex. Oh. After Yu falls asleep, Natsuki grabs a bottle of prescription pills that she had brought with her that she had stolen from her mom, and she starts swallowing a bunch of them because of how worried she was that she was going to be killed. She wanted to die having gotten married to Yu and having gotten close to him, and then now she, got what she wanted and she doesn't want to be here anymore. This is so sad. And Yu apparently was not actually fully asleep because he sees her doing something and he says, "What did you just swallow?" And once he's kind of putting two and two together, he makes her spit everything out. As horrible as it is that this is an incestuous relationship, you can tell they care about each other so much, and they're kind of the only people that they have in, their corner. And unfortunately, while they are still naked outside in the dark, the parents and older relatives stumble upon them because they've been looking for them. And when they find them, as you can imagine, they absolutely lose their shit, realizing what they must have just been doing. And they get in so much trouble. They actually lock Natsuki in this little shed overnight, and the very next day they leave, and they basically say, "You are never going to see you again," and they're never returning for any of these summer family vacations, and Natsuki's definitely heartbroken. So here the book actually takes quite an unexpected turn to where we jump to Natsuki now being 31 years old. And she is now married, and her life became very different after the night that her and Yu were caught together. Her family did not trust her at all. They would not let her do anything, really. They kept her locked in her room at all times. If she's at home, they'll lock the door, and if they leave, she can't go to the bathroom until somebody gets home. So her life is extremely restricted. This continues so intensely to the point where even when she's in college and wanting to move out, they're not even letting her. Part of the whole thing isn't so much that they think she's going to do something that's going to negatively impact her, period. It's, oh, you're going to ruin our family's reputation. So it's a very selfish reason that they have for, trying to protect her. Eventually, Natsuki really wants her independence, and in order to do this, the only thing she can really think of to escape her family is to get married. And we find out that Natsuki doesn't have any interest in dating or romantic relationships, romance, anything. Based on Natsuki's experience with Mr. Igasaki as a child, her being essayed, she had no intention of having sex as she grew up and as she became an adult. Other than that time with Yu, which is someone who she really trusted, she has never pursued any sort of sexual or romantic relationships. So she actually went on a website that is strictly for connecting people who are looking to arrange a marriage and potentially have sort of contracts of what that marriage will entail. It's not for the sake of finding a partner based on romance. And so she specifically looked for someone who wanted to get married, who did not want to have any sex in the relationship and did not want to have any kids. And so we can see that Natsuki's perspective has shifted from when she was a child, where all she wanted to do was be a good factory component and, work and have babies because that's what she should be doing if she's a good girl. But as an adult, you can tell she doesn't she doesn't want to do what the factory wants her to do, because honestly, what has the factory ever done for her? Her life has been miserable, so playing by the rules isn't going to get her anything. But she feels that she needs to put up the pretense that she wants these things that the factory would want for her. So she is pretending that she wants to be married, and she finds this man named Tomoya, and he wanted no sex, no kids. And interestingly enough, because of his own trauma, he does not want to be even touched by a woman at all. Natsuki and Tomoya have been married for a while, and they have never even hugged. And they live together, but they live completely separate lives. They each have their own bedroom. And honestly, this arrangement works really, really well for both of them. Natsuki has actually really gotten her husband Tomoya to subscribe to this idea of the factory as well, and he is totally against it too. He does not want to have babies. He's in this arranged marriage to keep up the pretense, and he also really doesn't want to work. He does not like having a job. And so they both believe that if they don't keep up this pretense, that the factory will eliminate them, and I guess find them and kill them perhaps. And one day Tomoya comes home. He's been fired from yet another job, and he's extremely depressed, and he's saying he doesn't want to live anymore. And Natsuki wants to cheer him up. So something that's kind of cute about their relationship is she has always told Tomoya stories from when she was a child in Akashina, the mountains where her grandparents lived, these summer trips that she would take with her family every year. She has described it to him in a lot of detail, and he thinks this place just sounds like the most beautiful place in the world. He has always wanted to go there. He'll always ask her to repeat these stories and try to pretend that he's there. And so to cheer him up, she's like, maybe we could take a trip somewhere. Maybe we could even try to go to Akashina. And he is over the moon. She's like, honestly, it probably isn't gonna work. I don't think we will be able to. She's definitely thinking that they wouldn't be able to stay with the grandparents after everything that's happened and her kind of being estranged from, the extended family. But she wants to at least get him excited, okay, well, maybe we could be in the general area, even if we're, not necessarily staying at that exact house. And come to find out that even though she tried to set his expectations that they probably wouldn't be able to do that, apparently he got very excited to call his parents up and say, we're going to Akashina, it's definitely happening. And I guess Tomoya's parents called Natsuki's parents, being like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing that you're letting them stay at the grandparents' house in Akashina. And then, because family reputation is very important, and Natsuki's parents want to have a good relationship with Tomoya's parents. They don't want to be like, oh no, we didn't say that. They can't do that. And beyond that, they are very happy about the fact that Natsuki is married, and they want to encourage anything that's going to help that relationship. And so because they've heard that Tomoya is depressed, they're like, you know what? Yeah, you should go do that. Apparently, her grandparents are no longer alive. It's the uncle who owns the house, but he's not currently living in it. Who is living in it but none other than you, Natsuki's ex-cousin boyfriend. I guess he's only started staying there recently, and it was something his uncle let him do for free, and so them planning on going up there, I guess the whole family has kind of coordinated, so both the uncle and you apparently know that Natsuki and her husband are coming, and Yu is going to be there. And it's so crazy to me that her parents are okay with this, despite how much they've kept her under lock and key her whole life, knowing that Yu is going to be there. But lo and behold, they let them. So they drive up together to Akashina. As I mentioned, this house is very remote. The drive in the mountains is a pretty intense, curvy, scary one. And in most places in the area they're going, there isn't cell service, and there's actually no stores in the area they're going to either. So they would have to drive all the way down the mountain to go to a store. And because they don't really love traditional society and people and being influenced by the factory, the idea of staying in a remote location for a while is actually right up their alley. So when they get there, they do see Yu, and Yu actually volunteers to go and stay in a hotel somewhere so that he won't be a burden to them while they're there. And they're like, no, absolutely not. Please stay. And he feels a little weird about it, but he decides to. And he actually regards Natsuki's husband, Tomoya, very warmly. He seems to quite like him, but he actually seems pretty displeased in general with Natsuki. We don't know exactly what he's thinking, but he kind of almost seems like pissed at her. So at one point, Natsuki asks Yu if he remembers planet Popopopia, which, you know, they had decided he was probably from that planet and Piyut's from that planet. And she's like, you know what? I found out that I'm actually from planet Popopopia too, because my stuffed animal Piyut told me so. And Yu is looking at her like, what is this woman saying? Because obviously when they were saying this stuff when they were like 9, 10, 11, sure, why not? But she's saying this at age 31 with her full chest, like firmly believing this. And he's trying to be like, well, yeah, we were kids. I don't really believe that stuff. But she just continues right on. And she's like, yeah, you know, it just doesn't seem like a spaceship is going to be able to come and save us. So I'm really just having to pretend to be an Earthling in order to live here on Earth. Tomoya even tells Yu that him and Natsuki got married just to, you know, hide in plain sight from the factory. And he gives him this whole spiel about the factory. And Yu really is like, oh my God, who are these people? What's wrong with them? And at this point, we actually get a flashback in the story back to when Natsuki was 11. And she is recalling an instance in which she says she killed the Wicked Witch at Mr. Igasaki's house. So we don't know exactly what this means at first. Apparently, Mr. Igasaki had actually called Natsuki's mom and told her that he wanted Natsuki to be a part of an intensive summer course. And of course, Natsuki is absolutely dreading this, but her mom is thrilled and she's like, oh, you're so lucky that he would even offer this to you. And she is supposed to be going to Mr. Igasaki's house, which I don't think her mom knows that she's going to his house necessarily, but he's like telling her where the spare key is so she can just let herself in. And she's dreading it, and so she asks Piyut, her stuffed animal, what she should do. And Piyut tells her that Mr. Igasaki is under the control of a wicked witch who has all these magical powers. And it's this wicked witch who wants to destroy her. And she's taking control of Mr. Igasaki. He's not the bad one. It's the wicked witch just controlling him. The wicked witch has already tried to start destroying your body, but she's really going to completely destroy it that first day of the summer course. So Natsuki knows that she needs to take action before that first day that she's supposed to go to Mr. Igasaki's house. During the middle of the night, Natsuki sneaks out of her house and goes to his house and lets herself in using the spare key. She has been told by Piyut that she needs to kill the Wicked Witch because if she doesn't, the Wicked Witch will kill her, and that's going to bring about the end of the entire world. So she has quite the motivation to do so, and when she gets inside, all of a sudden while she's walking, everything in her vision just turns pink. So it seems like this is something connected to her magical powers, perhaps. And she walks into Mr. Igasaki's bedroom and she sees that he's asleep. All of the sudden, there is a blue lump that appears before her, and she doesn't know what it is, but she thinks, okay, this must be the Wicked Witch. And with her, in order to be prepared, she had brought a garden scythe, which is a very scary weapon. And she starts stabbing this blue lump over and over and over. And as she does, she sees all of this crazy golden liquid flowing everywhere. So after stabbing this lump, Piyut tells Natsuki that she needs to cast her magic spell using the magic word. So she just says Popopopia a bunch of times. And at this point, he's like, oh my gosh, Natsuki, you did it. Did you know you are actually a warrior? And actually, you are from planet Popopopia. So this was amazing. Love that you did this. She's super relieved to hear that she was sent to Earth from planet Poppin' when she was a baby, because she's like, dude, I knew I was not an Earthling, okay? Now, the next day, when Natsuki's at school, she hears that Mr. Igasaki has been murdered. And she's actually really confused. She's like, who murdered Mr. Igasaki? Because in her mind, she's like, well, I know that whatever I stabbed with the scythe was a blue lump, and like Mr. Igasaki had been in his bed, like that, not the same thing. I killed the Wicked Witch, not Mr. Igasaki. So she's really confused, but then she's like hearing that Mr. Igasaki was killed with a garden scythe, and she had actually tried to dispose of it somewhere nearby his house at the school. So she's like, oh, they must have followed me and found the garden scythe and then grabbed it and used it. So she's like really trying to make all these dots connected that are not connected. So she actually even helps his parents and the community pass out flyers trying to get information about who killed him. And the whole time, she really doesn't seem clear on whether or not she had anything to do with his murder. Now we are flash forwarding again to present day with Natsuki, Tomoya, and Yu all in Akashina. And we learn a bit more about Natsuki and her husband's beliefs about the factory. Apparently, Natsuki says she really wants to be brainwashed by the factory, even though she doesn't like the factory. If she could just be brainwashed to want the same things that everyone else wants, her life would be so much easier. Meanwhile, her husband does not want to be brainwashed at all. He's honestly a little jealous that Natsuki is an alien, and he would like to be an alien as well. So in his mind, he thinks that if he can break enough earthly taboos, he will become an alien. And so the earthly taboo that he is thinking of starting with is, he's like, you know what? I think I should have sex with my brother, because like that's definitely a taboo. I'm sure that'll make me an alien. And he's saying this to both Natsuki and Yu. And Yu is like, what the actual F? And Natsuki is like, yeah, you probably should do that. I get it. So he actually decides to take a trip while they are all staying in Akashina. He actually leaves to go and proposition his brother. And he comes home, and not long after, there is someone who comes to the house, and they're freaking out like, oh no, someone from the factory. And it is Tomoya's dad. Tomoya's dad had been told by Tomoya's brother that Tomoya tried to have sex with him. He's like, I don't know why my brother is doing this, but obviously mentally he's not okay. And so Tomoya's dad comes and he beats the shit out of him. And he is like, what the hell is wrong with you? And during this whole time, he's like, you know, you have a wife. Why would you need to have sex with your brother? What are you doing? And Tomoya actually admits that him and Natsuki have never had sex. And this puts everything into a whole tailspin, because it's so crazy how like their parents are so communicative. So once Tomoya's parents know that Natsuki and Tomoya have not had sex, then he's like, okay, well, I need to tell Natsuki's family that they haven't had sex. And so then Natsuki's family finds out, and they're freaking out. So now they need to get involved. So they come to Akashina, they take him home. So they leave you, and they're trying to figure out, like, why have you never been intimate with your husband? And at one point, Natsuki's older sister actually takes her aside, and Natsuki's sister has never been nice to her, but she's saying, like, look, I know you can't have sex because of that teacher diddling you when you were a kid. And Natsuki is super surprised because she did not know that her sister knew about this. So her sister starts to try to get a better understanding of what happened, and she's like, honestly, I was kind of jealous of you. He was hella hot. Natsuki's like, okay, where are we going with this? She's kind of trying to get Natsuki to admit, like, you killed him, didn't you? Like, I get it. I get what you did, but you did, didn't you? And Natsuki's like trying to be like, no, but it's like kind of obvious. Like, yes, of course she killed him, which is so crazy. She was in elementary school when she murdered her teacher. That's so wild. So while talking to her sister and her parents, she just keeps being subjected to these demands that her and her husband have a baby. And Natsuki and Tomoya decide, dude, we need to escape. This is way too much. We don't want to have a baby. We don't want to be at the mercy of our parents. And they decide that they want to go back to Akashina because it gives them the space they need, which, still concerning because like their parents found them there before, but I think the difference being that before they told them they were going, and this time they don't plan on telling anyone. So Natsuki and Tomoya go back to Akashina. And during this time, Natsuki has this theory. She's like, you know what? I think being Papabopopian is actually contagious. And I think by now, you're probably Papabopopian. You're probably an alien now too. And he's like, oh my gosh, you think so? And they're like, well, honestly, that must mean that you probably is now too. And the whole time you has kind of thought that they seemed pretty crazy, but the more they talk to him once they're there, you can tell that he starts feeling like some of the stuff they're saying is resonating with him. He's always kind of felt like he just needs to do whatever he's told, and the idea of kind of finally having this freedom and not just being, required to do what everyone else wants might actually be appealing to him. And probably that little nostalgia of thinking of being an alien as a child, like that was one of the few times he was happy when him and Natsuki were talking about being aliens and magical and whatnot. So the three of them decide that they no longer want to live as Earthlings. They decide they want to pretend that they have just crash landed on Earth and everything that they are seeing is brand new to them. And so the ways in which they decide to survive is based on, kind of exploring and figuring out what works. But the main criteria is this rational? Is doing this behavioral rational? What is the most rational thing to do? So in some cases, the most rational thing is doing what the humans would do. Like, they have a toilet. The most rational thing is to use it. However, in some cases, they are definitely not doing the societally acceptable thing. For example, so they do not have a ton of food. And as I mentioned, like the store is not close by, and they're also trying to avoid, interacting with humans, other Earthlings. And so they're actually stealing a lot of food from the neighbors in the area. But at one point they decide like, hey, should we consume our own semen? Because it seems very irrational to waste it, and there is probably a rational component to trying to consume it for nutrition. So some of the stuff they do is a little crazy. They kind of make these nests out of bedding on the floor rather than sleeping in beds. I'm not sure exactly why, but like they kind of, they wouldn't know to sleep in beds any more than they would know to just kind of gather cozy stuff on the floor. That's kind of the idea of them sort of figuring everything out from scratch. And they also stop wearing clothes because it's just not the rational thing to do. And the three of them like sleep together naked in their little bedding nest. What's really interesting is Natsuki, who in her adult years has never felt any sort of romantic or sexual feelings towards anyone, starts to think that she is feeling like she's in love, but not with you or not with Tomoya, but like the three of them together as a unit. She is like in love with this dynamic that they have and is even feeling like sexually aroused by it. Anyway, one night she wakes up because she is hit over the head with something. And it's dark and she can't see what's going on, but she grabs like a trophy and hits whatever is attacking her over and over and over again. And once she has done that quite a lot, she sees that it's like a little old lady. And she's looking for her husband, and when she finds him, she sees that he had been knocked out as well. So now she's looking for Yu, and her and Tomoya, who's now waking up, go outside and they see that Yu is grappling with some old man. This old man sees Natsuki. He says, you're the one who killed Takaki, which we're like, oh my God, what is going on? So Tomoya, I think, gets a golf club and like hits this old man, and then Natsuki stabs his eyes. And then she starts stabbing his body, and basically both of these elderly people are murdered by the three of them. And Natsuki's like, yeah, Takaki, that was my teacher's first name. So Mr. Igasaki's parents have come to Akashina to find Natsuki. They were hoping to kill Natsuki for murdering their son. We find out that it sounds like it's very likely that Natsuki's sister had actually recorded the conversation about murdering Mr. Igasaki that she'd had with Natsuki, and they think that she sent it to his parents because her and Natsuki kind of had some various beefs. And so she must have told them where she thought Natsuki was staying, so they came to try and kill her. At this point, after Mr. Igasaki's parents have died, they find out that there was a very significant landslide on the mountains, and apparently there had been a smaller one before Mr. Igasaki's parents had got there, and it had caused a lot of people in the area to flee in case there was another crazier one. But then after Mr. Igasaki's parents got there, there was a more intense one. So basically, it seems like it's just the three of them left in this little town area and these two dead bodies. And as I mentioned, they did not have a lot of access to food. So they decide, like, okay, so should we eat these bodies? Because, like, highly rational to do so. They dismember and prepare these bodies for cooking in a really, really highly graphic way. That's quite gnarly. And they prepare multiple dishes with man, what they are calling, like, miso soup with man, or man simmered in sweetened sauce. And so they eat all these man dishes, and it is the best food they've had in quite some time. At this point, Yu makes a request that if humans don't come and find them and try to take them away, he suggests that they kill him and eat him. Because it doesn't make sense for all of us to starve, so you might as well eat me. But then Tomoya and Natsuki are like, oh, but why would we eat you? I mean, there's three of us. Why are you the one that we should eat? Like, that doesn't seem fair. And Yu says, well, you know what? I want to be the one who decides what happens to my body. But they both love you, so they're kind of like, oh, no, we don't want you to have to do that. So Tomoya's like, well, no, like, eat me first. And Natsuki's like, no, eat me first. Like, they're all fighting about who should get eaten first. And it's hard to come to an agreement. So what they decide is like, well, what if we just taste each other just a little bit? And the order in which we eat each other is based on, like, who is tastiest. Obviously, we should eat whoever tastes the best first. I mean, the book has already really gotten more and more intense, and this part is just like where I feel like it starts to, you know, transition into feelings of, like, unreality. Like, is this even happening? They just start biting each other, biting chunks out of each other, and nobody seems to be in pain as this is happening. They're all just, like, commenting on the taste and like, ooh, salty. So they're just snacking on each other and having a great old time, but then they decide that these little tastes aren't enough. So then they start going for each other's innards. So they, like, kind of start, like, opening each other up and, like, starting to nibble on each other's organs, their entrails. And, like, they're all having such a hearty, delicious meal that I guess they just pass out and go to sleep. Also, probably partially due to blood loss and what have you. And Natsuki wakes up and she's got, like, a finger that's, like, fallen out of her mouth that she'd been snacking on. And she hears a scream. And so they all kind of wake up. And the scream is the scream of her sister, who is at the door. And the sight she must see is wild. You know, all of them, like, completely bloody and, like, partially open and organs and blah, blah, blah. Like, ugh. So she is not alone. There are all of these people in these, like, jumpsuits that look like they are from a rescue party because of the landslide, trying to recover anyone who is in the area. And when all of these people see this scene, they are disgusted. People are puking. One of them is like, are you human? They all look at each other and they're like, poppin' popopia? Poppin' popopia, poppin' popopia. Now, another piece of this scene, despite being kind of opened up and, like, their organs kind of, like, being nibbled on, all of their bellies are really huge. So one of the members of the search party sees their bellies and is like, what are those bellies? To which the three of them reply that they are pregnant. Oh gosh, my dog is making groaning noises because he is sickened by this. And Yu says, oh, don't worry, you know, this form of you is also dormant inside of you, even if it isn't evident yet, and it can infect you at any time. And guess what? Tomorrow we are going to multiply, and the next day we are going to multiply even further. And, you know, as all these people are barfing and disgusted and whatever, Tomoya, Natsuki, and Yu walk out the door holding hands and step out onto the Earthlings planet. So how about that ending? Are you like, wait, that's the ending? Because it is the ending. And yes, definitely a lot of question marks. So I decided to look online to see how different people were interpreting the ending. And a lot of people said that, you know, if you're suffering from extreme starvation, you know, your belly can get very distended. And so they were saying that that's probably what the bellies were. But given their sort of shared delusion, they're thinking that, you know, their stomachs are them being pregnant. Their delusions have kind of shifted over time without any real rhyme or reason to it. Like Tomoya thinking that if he violates these social norms and indulges these taboos, that he could become an alien, or them deciding like, you know what, I think being Popo-Bopopian is probably contagious, and them thinking like, okay, we don't need to have sex to reproduce, we're just aliens and being Popo-Bopopian is contagious, and perhaps the pregnancy is contagious, or now these other people are all going to be Popo-Bopopian. I don't really think any of this is supposed to be taken as literal. I don't think the author is meaning for us to interpret that literally. I think that she is trying to show these people who have really struggled with what society demands of them, and, you know, society has not provided a good life for them. It's really kind of pushed them down a dark path, and they sort of had to turn to these really wild delusions in order to comfort themselves. And obviously, yes, there's like mental health stuff at play that I think is definitely connected to some of the things that they've gone through. I really enjoyed the component of this book that was looking at societal expectations and norms. And you know, I get that there's a lot that is common for people to do, but I think the part that's so interesting is if you want to do what is very socially acceptable and like kind of go that traditional route of getting married and having kids and whatnot, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's strange how important it is to people for other people to do that. Like, why do you care if someone else gets married and have kids? Just like a reminder to look at everything that you do in terms of, does this actually even make sense to you, or are you just doing this because you feel like you're supposed to? I really liked this book, and a lot of people didn't love the ending. They thought it was just really over the top, the cannibalism. Even though there's a lot of delusions in this book, I always felt like I liked Natsuki's character. She always seemed like a kind person, and so she just escalated quite a lot. I get that the ending was quite over the top, and I feel like I would have liked a little bit more answers, and like if it could have unfolded a little bit more after they were found, to see like what would happen to them after. Maybe something would happen that would be like, okay, a spaceship came down, and then we find out like, no, the author really did want you to take this all literally. I think that would have been like kind of interesting. I don't know. But I am curious for people who did read this book, because I liked it all the way through, but the ending definitely did feel like kind of a different level. So I'm curious, did anyone here really like the ending? Is there anyone who took it literally? I'm wondering. But thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.